This is Millennial Marketer. I'm Victoria Verdeja. Our guest today is a good friend and one of my mentors, Liza Walton. Liza is a social media strategist and the president at Kreps Social. Kreps Social is a marketing and social media company focused on helping organizations create authentic connections through relevant content and dialogue to engage a targeted audience through social media. Today, we'll be hearing about Liza's take on how social media fits into today's marketing mix. So thank you so much, Liza, for joining us today. I'm really excited to hear about your story, about what you have going on, but more than anything, how you've incorporated social media as a regular, if not one of the most important pieces of the marketing mix. So how are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this with you and take some time out of my day to talk about myself.
To start us off, can you walk me through your journey as a professional? So where'd you start and how'd you get to where you are now?
So after I got my MBA, I started with Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. I was a systems consultant in the change management competency. So basically, we would take the new systems that Anderson Consulting was building and companies were spending millions and millions of dollars on, and we would figure out how to communicate how people's work was going to change and also train employees on how they were going to use this new system. So I worked with what is now Verizon. It was Bell Atlantic back at the time. I'm like totally aging myself. Up in Washington, D.C., and then later on with the United States Air Force at Eglin Air Force Base. But as that job was, I was away from home 5 days a week for over a year. So I would get on a plane 6 a.m. on Monday. I would land in Miami at 7 p.m. on Friday, and just, I had two toothbrushes. I would have like one shoe here, one shoe there. I was like, this is not sustainable. And then I got a job with Burson Marsteller Latin America. This was during the .com boom. Again, totally aging myself. But we did all the PR for AT&T Latin America, Mercado Libre, Patagon, UB. Some of the names I think are still around, or have been actually or absorbed by bigger companies. Took a brief stint to work with a startup, and then September 11th happened. Worked in PR for a little bit longer, and then I worked with the city of Miami as a public information officer. And eventually I was promoted to net administrator. So I was in charge of the Little Havana neighborhood, the Coral Way Brickell neighborhood, and towards the end, the Coconut Grove neighborhood. And that was very much grassroots communication, community relations. Here are the new programs that the city of Miami has. This is what's happening with like the boring but important stuff, right? But also doing community events and giving out turkeys to the viejitos. And it was a really lovely job, actually. But 2010, around there, 2009, with the crash and everything else, we all kind of started to have our pay cut, believe it or not. So towards the end of my stint with City of Miami, I was making 30% less than, like, over a year, I made 30% less. Oh yeah. So I had very good friends still in the PR space that had clients that were coming up to them asking them, okay, so the social media thing, what do we do? Is this something that you guys do? So I had friends that were like, Liza, you're on Twitter, you know what you're doing. We'll pay you a couple extra bucks if you can help run this for our clients. Before I knew it, I was making more money doing that than what I was doing for the city of Miami. So I would wake up super early in the morning, get tweets out for clients, go to work my 8 hours, come back and put together messaging, and kind of felt my way through it initially. And then I was hired, Related Group then hired me. It was just me at the time, and began to grow my company with them. And at that moment, I was able to quit the cushy government job, take a leap of faith, and started my social marketing with my first intern. So of which some of the interns came from FIU, some of them from Sorry to say that. But that's kind of how it started. That's how it started. And actually this year, February 2022, my company merged with Kreps PR. So we are now Kreps Social. So this is the evolution of really being able to leverage what a bigger company behind us can offer to our clients as well. So we're now kind of in phase 2, so to speak. But all of my staff came with me. We are a great, happy family of all women, work really well together. So I think this is a good next step for us.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations. It's an incredible story to see how you went from, I mean, something that wouldn't even now resemble PR into PR, PIO, and now full blown. I mean, you just sold your social media company. So congratulations. But I want to learn a little bit more about Kreps Social. What types of services do you offer clients, and how does that help them reach their goals?
So we are purely social media. So we leave the SEO and the digital to the people that have that is their skill set. It is a very different skill set. We are communicators first and foremost. So the PR background does help a lot, because what we do is we write, but also knowing what works visually, right? So for many of our clients, we basically take over their social media as if we were an extension of their marketing team. So that means getting to know the client intimately, knowing what's upcoming, knowing what their voice is, knowing what their brand standards are, knowing what the client's going to go for, what the client's not going to go for, maybe push those limits a little bit and see if we can, because it is social media, it should be fun. And then we take care of everything from creating the content, planning the content, posting the content, and the community management part of it. So if we do get comments, the good, the bad, or the ugly, making sure that those are being handled. But then also growing the platforms and making sure that we're reaching the right audiences for our clients as well. And then lastly, which is boring but important, is the reporting. So that's, is it working? What worked? What didn't work? Are there particular kinds of posts that your audience tends to engage with more? Is there a way that can be replicated in a way that's not duplicated? So all of those things are what we handle for our clients. But it's increasingly becoming. Oops. Can you hear me?
AirPod fumble. Yep, you can hear you.
Okay. But increasingly, it's a more diverse skill set than it used to be. It was back in the day. It was basically Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and you didn't even have company pages. It was mostly text and link based. And now it's, does this photo work? Increasingly, is it video? So all of those things that we try to learn about and implement and test and get the buy-in of our clients to basically give them another platform to get their messages out.
So what is your personal philosophy as a marketer?
This was like the one question that I was like, I think it's don't be a jerk. And I'm saying jerk because I don't want to necessarily say the word I really want to say. But I think just being genuine with your clients and being good to them. And if you're good to them, they're going to be good back. So it's being honest if you think something isn't necessarily going to work, but also being flexible enough, knowing that there might be certain constraints and certain things that have to go out, for example. So I think really creating a good relationship with your clients, at least for me, is what's important. And that's why many of my clients stay with me for a really long time. Even if it's just, I mean, it's kind of funny, like, my client from Related at like 8 o'clock last night, like sent me a meme, like just, which was kind of surprising because he's normally not that way, but very funny, right? So the fact that clients do feel comfortable in talking with us and sharing with us and seeing what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I think part of that is just being, like I said, not being a jerk and being open to it.
And I'm curious to sort of explore how that translates to your clients' customers, right? So if your personal philosophy as a marketer is don't be a jerk, I wonder if that almost means be honest. And that's kind of something that I think brands have a difficult time doing, especially on social media. That's such a curated world, right? Have you ever thought about how that extends all the way down?
But I think social media is one of those spaces where people can sniff out inauthenticity, right? So if it's a brand that, let's say, is doing something, sorry, that's Kevin, work from home.
Everybody follow Kevin on Instagram.
Yes. But if if a company is doing something that's not quite right, but then posts something that rings hollow, right? Then it's going to get sniffed out and you're going to get the comments of, oh yeah, that's we see that happen all the time of brands being taken down, or canceled, so to speak, or boycotted. So I think that authenticity is really still what rings true with social media. And I think definitely the younger generations can definitely sniff it out better than the older generation. So I think as Gen Z now gets more purchasing power and things like that, for them, I think it's really important to know that who they're purchasing from or who they're supporting as a brand isn't a jerk.
So that kind of takes me perfectly into my next question. I'm curious to know what role you think social media plays in today's marketing mix, because obviously a few years ago, things were very different.
Things are very different. I remember just taking Related as an example. One of my first meetings with Related, social media was just an afterthought, right? So it was mostly, where's the big ad buy going to go? Where are the billboards going to go? That was the first thing. The second thing was, okay, PR. So we're going to get that Wall Street Journal article. We're going to get the Herald. We're going to get, we're going to do the big Ocean Drive party. So we get the big, spread on that. And then it was like, oh yeah, social. And now it is it's a completely different kind of meeting. So it's a weekly meeting regarding social media, and money is being spent on the assets and the messaging. And great, PR sends me their clips and we will give them more life, but social media is almost leading it in a way. I think it sort of depends on what the industry is, because also digital has a big component of it as well. So when you look at real estate or hospitality, which is the majority of my clients, they're putting more money on digital than anything else, because that's where you're going to click through and you're going to book the cruise or you're going to stay at the hotel, right? Even $2 million condos, they're getting leads through digital, and social media supports that. So you go to digital, you see it, or we do it through the social media ads. It takes you to the landing page. People then go ahead and put the contact form, and they're interested in, a 2-bedroom in Coconut Grove, whatever it might be. That's really where they're putting their money, and that's really where they're putting their focus.
And that's sort of where you start to see that social media really does have an effect on ROI, and traditionally not something that you would consider that did. So talk to me about some other ways that social media strategies and efforts could translate to ROI, to improved revenues. What are some other ways? I know you mentioned the condo that you see.
Right. Well, we've got, it's actually a really cool cruise line. They go, you'd love it. It goes through La Patagonia. You can actually like start in Chile, end up in Argentina, or start in Argentina, end up in Chile, or do the round trip if you like, and you go and you see the penguins. It's really cool. I would love to do it. The only thing is you spend 4 days without Wi-Fi. But there's something kind of nice about that, right?
Only the social media marketer would find that a nightmare.
It's a little bit of a nightmare, and also a little bit of a nightmare for us on getting user generated content, because it's really fun, because it'll be like quiet for 4 days, and then we get all the pics that kind of come in like a big, just because you're taking pictures of penguins and literally the end of the world, like Cape Horn and glaciers and things like that, and then people do the big photo dumps, and then for us we kind of go through and we see. But it was mostly kind of like an old boomer kind of thing that people would do, and they hired us. This was back in 2018, so this is pre-pandemic, when we still work with them now and things are finally opening back up. But they were like, we think that there could be, because the cruises aren't that expensive. I mean, they are, but they aren't. We think that this could be something that older millennials would be really keen on, because this is kind of a bucket list item. You go to the end of the, you basically, you might not make it to Antarctica, but you're kind of waving at it, right? Because you literally are fin del mundo. So what we did is we did a very specific ad campaign, and we put together the pixels, so a little bit of that digital stuff, and we were able to track through based upon the video of somebody going in a smaller boat, landing on this little island in like the fjords of Patagonia and hanging out with the penguins. Amazing. And oh yeah, I'll send you the Instagram so you can just be like, I totally want to do this. And then people clicked through, put in some information, and then from there they were able to do the callbacks, and we were able to say, okay, we did a case study on it. We had, within 2 months, we had 25 bookings that just came from social. So the campaign paid for itself, in that we could actually say, all right, we spent however many, and then the Chilean peso is like sort of interesting. Like, it's always kind of funny when I go into that ad account, because I always forget that it's different. So it's like, no, we didn't spend $100,000, but it looks like we did. But we spent a certain amount of money. We did it for a specific amount of time. We were able, it was a partnership between the company as well, because once they left Instagram or Facebook or whatever, went to the website and put in their information, it was then their follow-up, right? So we worked together of, okay, these were how many leads, these were the people, and then we were able to go back and present to the leadership in Chile, who were very old school, of this makes sense where you spend your money. Like, you're spending a smaller amount of money, because your posts don't, it doesn't cost anything to open up an Instagram or, Facebook. You do have to spend a little bit of money, but a little bit of money goes a long way in social. So that's something that I think we were able to prove. And now a very old school 100-year-old company is now embracing, okay, yeah, maybe we should get the influencers on the cruise, and maybe we should spend some more money on video, and getting the right photographers out there, because it's just majestic landscape. So it's just the most Instagrammable place in the world, right? So that's kind of another example I think I can give.
I think that's a really good example. Thanks for sharing it. And we will be chatting later about the cruises. It sounds amazing. So you mentioned influencers. We're getting down to the last few questions, but I can't not ask. What do you think the future of social media looks like given all the updates we've been seeing in the last few weeks, different hands in social media than we've seen in the past? Where do you think this is going?
And that's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question. I do think that there will be kind of a fragmentation, if that's such an MBA word, but I think people are going to start spending time on the platforms where they feel most comfortable. And it's whether it's the type of content that you're consuming, or if it's a platform, if you're more text-based and you kind of like the witty back and forth, maybe Twitter is your thing. If you really do enjoy taking, and this is one of those things that I thought Instagram's kind of missed the mark, because I think Instagram really should have really kept it to, I just really want beautiful pictures, and so I think it's in the type of content, where your friends are. I think it's also going to be focused a little bit more on those things that we talked about when it comes to ROI. So where I used to be able to 3 years ago, and just, we'd have clients that they would get, 500, 600 likes on a post. And that, unless you're putting money behind it, or unless you are an influencer, or unless you're Nike or, Chanel or something like that, you're not going to get those thousands you're not necessarily going to get the engagement, but, how are your sales doing? Right. So I think it's one of those things that you kind of need to start connecting the dots a little bit more. And I think also as people kind of, okay, I can't just necessarily have an Instagram anymore. Maybe, as Gen Z grows older, I mean, Instagram is very much the millennials. Like, that's always going to be your guys. You're going to have it forever. You're going to be on it forever. My generation, I think we kind of straddle a lot of different things, but, boomers are still going to continue to be on Facebook, and they'll dabble a little bit in Instagram. But I think, TikTok is coming, especially as Gen Z begins to be able to buy more and affect more. But then I think other platforms are also kind of looking to see, Twitter is a much happier place now. I see a lot of people going back to Twitter or using Twitter for specific reasons. Like, the minute Will Smith slapped, sorry to bring it up, Chris Rock, the first place I went to was Twitter. I think the first place everybody went to was Twitter, of like, okay, what's happening? This is the best way to figure out what's happening in real time. And that's kind of how those platforms have kind of found their niches, right? And LinkedIn, it's still where people go to make connections and to get business information. And at some point there's going to be something new. And while we think it's fixed, every 6 months there's something. 5 years ago, we were all freaking out about Snapchat, and how is a social media marketer, how are we going to use Snapchat? And this is like before Snapchat did the whole thing where you can kind of put things together and it stays up there longer. But I was like, I'm not investing my time creating cute snaps and doing filters if it's going to be gone in 24 hours. Like this is not a good use of your time, or use, for my clients, use of your money for my time. I'll do it, but I just don't necessarily, and then Instagram just kind of rolled out things to kind of squash that. But Snapchat still has its, there's still certain content creators out there, certain brands that are creating good content there.
Sounds like,
so I think
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, but yeah, so I can't necessarily tell you, but I think that's one of the exciting but challenging parts of being. So, and the day I retire, I'll probably just close everything down and just stay on TikTok. For me, that's just me. I'll be like, you know what? I'm just kind of like, when you find your music. I don't know, you're too young still, but like at some point, like I am still stuck in like 2010 for my music.
I'm still stuck with Vine. I'm still mourning the loss of Vine.
Oh,
That was a good one. I mean, they couldn't figure out how to monetize it, but that was a good one. I mean, one thing's for sure, it's not going anywhere, right? It's only going to get
social
bigger
media is not
and
going
better.
anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just how it's going to be, and there might just be more choices in a way that we sit down in front of the TV and there's infinite choices of what we want to see, what we want to learn about, what we want to watch. I think that's kind of, in my opinion, where social media is going. As a marketer, it's a little stressful because then we need to kind of figure out, I think certain brands do have to be everywhere, but I don't think all brands need to be everywhere. And then I think that's where the analysis comes in, and we have a fixed set of we've got a fixed budget. We have this much money. Where do we want to focus our efforts? Where are our clients, and where are our potential clients?
Liza, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and for predicting the future for us today.
Well, let's see if it happens.
I don't know. It sounded like it made sense to me. Thank you for really just explaining to us sort of your evolution with social media. I think some of us that might be newer to the industry kind of got here and it was already here, but learning how it evolved is I think really important to understanding what's coming next, right? Because history has a way of repeating itself. So again, thank you so much. We'll make sure to keep an eye on Kreps Social and see all the great things you guys accomplish for your clients. And I will definitely be hitting you up about that cruise.
Definitely. Well, thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you for listening today. For more helpful marketing information and tips, be sure to visit the Millennial Marketers blog at victoriaverdeja.com/blog.